to ask Mr. Evan Rowe, pastor of Midway Baptist Church, to come up. Thank you.
If we could, we can just have everyone
Okay.
stand up and we'll get a group.
Keep going, okay. Derek Summerall, minister of Versailles Church of Christ. Mary Weiss, minister of Midway Presbyterian Church. Eric Rice, children's minister, Journey Church. Mike Van Hoos, accepting this recognition on behalf of his wife, Deidre Van Hoos, member of First Christian Church. John Davis, member of Midway Presbyterian Church. Sally Kennard, member of Midway Presbyterian Church. Susan Craig, member of Versailles Methodist Church. Pam Settles, member of Versailles Presbyterian Church. And Donna Kelly, member of Versailles Presbyterian Church. There are members who are also not in attendance tonight, but volunteer to support the Backpack Buddies program. We'd like to recognize those members as well. Judy Offit, member of Midway Presbyterian. Cecilia Gass, community member. Sarah Rathbone, community member. David Graves, member of First Christian Church. Tammy Heston, member of Versailles Church of Christ. And Heather McCall, minister of Midway Christian Church. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Watts, for coordinating this. And thank you to all of you for everything you do. That is such a wonderful program for so many of our Woodford County families. Okay, next item on the agenda is the good news report. And I will say that Mr. Adkins thoroughly stole a lot of my material. Obviously, all of us want to recognize Amber Sargent on her huge accomplishment. It is an honor for our district to see her recognized for her commitment to students and her work day in and day out. I also wanted to highlight that I got a lot of feedback from some Huntertown students that the Extension office had come and done a program that the kids really enjoyed. So our thanks to the Extension office and Ryan Farley for always being such a great community partner, and Adam Probst at that office as well. And obviously, as Mr. Adkins noted, our band and athletics and many of our extracurricular activities are off to a good start. I know our middle school academic team has had a couple wins and exciting time for the beginning of the school year and now moving into fall. And I know all of us are probably looking forward to fall break and some family time with that. So I will go to Hannah next.
Absolutely. So another thing is a lot of you also stole my thunder because I was also going to highlight Dr. Amber Sargent. I'm lucky enough to have her in my AP US history class. And so I've only had the opportunity to have her teach me for a couple of weeks, but I can give you all a firsthand review. She is more amazing than any of us can put into words. She's just honestly one of the most caring educators that I've ever met in my life. And there are so many others out there in our county that are like her. And so I think it's so important that we recognize the work that our teachers do, that we see and both that we don't see.
Thank you, Hannah. Ms. Glass?
I wanted to piggyback on Mr. Adkins a little bit because I happen to know the band also won Best Color Guard, Best Percussion, Best Visual Effect, Best General Effect, and Class 4A first place champions. So just wanted to piggyback on that and wish them, you know, congratulations. And I think that's an awesome accomplishment for our students.
Thank you. Mr. Adkins?
The only thing I can remember that I left off my list was fall break. So I want to wish everyone a great fall break. This is our last week before fall break, and I think it's much needed. As Ms. Hash said, when you get out into the classrooms and the schools and you see the work that's taking place, not just by our staff, but by our students as well, it's time for a break. So we're excited for that.
And I would add, I did come to 8th grade night, and there were so many people here that I couldn't even park on this side of the football field. I had to go around and park in the grass. So that's wonderful. So many people out watching our students and having a good time. Ms. McHale?
I was able to attend senior night for our men's soccer club, which was the same night as 8th grade night for the football team. Great turnout for that, and wanted to wish the men's soccer team and the women's soccer team very good luck as we head into districts. I believe the week of fall break is when we'll play districts. That I'm not sure of. Excellent. Good. And then also good luck to all the fall sports and other activities as we round out the fall semester. A quick update on Project Graduation. We did have a booth at the Twilight Festival over the weekend, and I'm happy to report we raised almost $1,300 at that. It was a bake sale booth, so it was a little daunting when I brought my brownies and cookies to see all the really good stuff that other parents brought. But that was really nice to see all of that turnout. We also have a calendar sale going on right now. Not really a calendar sale, it's the calendar fundraiser. A lot of people may have seen that lately. You sign up for a day and you give the dollar amount on that day. If it's anything less than a certain day, it's a straight dollar amount. So if you happen to know anybody that is raising money for Project Graduation, that's something that's ongoing as well. In that vein, I also wanted to wish good luck to our seniors as we're getting into, I think, prime time for making decisions on what they're doing next year. I know this is a really stressful time for a lot of kids as they're either deciding where and when to go to college or what they're going to do after graduation. So just keep them sort of in the forefront of your minds too as we interact with those kids and try to help them make good decisions. And I think that's about it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McHale. Ms. Springate?
Well, I am last again, so by the time we get to me, there have been so many good news reports. I just hate to go on and really, make the meeting any longer than it has to be. But I do think that our students are absolutely number one staff, and I'm just so excited for everybody to be able to have fall break next week. So.
Thank you, and I apologize. I meant to reverse it. I'll get it next month. All right, next item on the agenda is the instructional and equity report from Mr. Asher. Welcome, Mr. Asher.
Welcome. Thank you. Once again, our 32nd day of school we finished as we head into break. Go off script. I'm sorry?
I like that. Count.
Yeah. I started doing it last year. I'll just keep with it. Go off script a little bit before I forget, because you mentioned the extension office. You probably saw some pictures posted. I think, thank you, Elaine, the Jack Jewett House. So we've re-upped that partnership. That was a program we had done for years, sending our 4th graders, and we now send our 5th graders this year. So it's good to get those type of things back up and running, get them out for field trips and community partnerships like that. Also working with WEEF right now and Woodford Theater to start those performance schedules back up. For years, we were able to send nearly all grade levels, at least on a rotational cycle, to different performances in the area. For obvious reasons, weren't able to do that, and now we're trying to get that back up and running. Probably won't be to full scale this year, but as best we can, get them over to Woodford Theater. All right, I'll get into my report. Josh, if you wouldn't mind, that CDIP report, which is also attached item in your agenda there. I won't go through all of this. There's a lot of words to this, so I did add some color just so I could walk us through it pretty quickly. I mentioned last month I'd like to break this up in 2 parts on our CDIP for my next 2 presentations, because then in November and December we'll actually roll in to the new CDIP for 2023. CDIP operates on a calendar year, so it's a little bit different. The purpose of that is you wait, you get your fall scores back, make adjustments into the new school year, and build that out for the next calendar year. So the two goal areas I'll mention tonight are proficiency and growth. The strategies and activities that relate to that are on the left-hand side, and then the status, and I categorize that as either implemented, partially, or not implemented. As you can see there, we're green and yellow, meaning that we're at least implemented or partially on all of those strategies. The only exception there why partial is we just weren't able to do the Kagan coaching. That's kind of a higher level training for our experienced members. Only reason is we were scheduled to host that for the region and they just simply didn't have the interest or the numbers to hold it here. So we're still looking for that opportunity on down the road. Josh, if you could scroll up, please, the objectives. Oh, the other way, please. Sorry, scroll down, I should say. Proficiency objectives as related to spring map is what it outlines here. All of those we came very close. We made progress from the fall to the spring, but fell short in a couple of areas. We did meet the growth objective as it relates to reading. And then finally, Josh, if you scroll down just one more, just a couple percentage points shy of our math growth goal there. Josh, if you would continue, please. The next area to address achievement gap was our summer program, which we had done for several years, but we continue to bolster that and make that more and more comprehensive. So obviously we did implement that, and here are some numbers for you. Elementary, 178 students, and there's the breakdown by grade level. In years past, it was more focused on primary levels. For obvious reasons, we expanded that. Sorry, Josh, I think there was something I missed. Oh, I'm sorry. What the graph you're seeing here, thank you, is the reading RIT gains. RIT is just the scale, the measurement for MAP. You've probably heard us say that before. And so from fall to fall, basically where they were last fall and the most recent MAP assessment, 86% of those that attended summer school were able to maintain that growth over the summer and into the fall. So that's very significant.
Slide as well.
Absolutely.
In prevention of summer slides. So it's our summer school is really paying for itself in our students' success.
Absolutely. In middle school, number's not as high because it's a little more focused. 14 students attended for what they call credit recovery. Now, students at middle school don't actually earn credits as they do in high school, but essentially those were classes that they had failed. So they hold them accountable to come in, and 14 out of 16 did meet that and recovered or passed those classes, did the makeup work to do that. And then they also did what was called Lit Camp. That's more of a, obviously for a reading focus, and similar to what I showed you on elementary, 60, we could round that up to 67%, maintain that growth from this fall, or excuse me, last fall to this fall. So paying dividends there. High school is different, as I've mentioned several times before. I'm talking about our summer school program there. It is more about the credit recovery, and approximately 133 students enrolled, not approximately, exactly 133 students, but approximately, it said over 225 high school credits recovered, so successful there. Dr. Amber Surgeon oversees our high school program, so you know that is quality. So that is it for the CDIP report. I do have several other things, but if you had any questions about that in particular, I'll take those now.
I have just one quick question. On the elementary level, how do those gains or that slide compare to, I guess we're post-COVID now, but pre-COVID? How is that?
Are they?
Are the scores, have we gained back what we lost during COVID for those kids that were, say, K-2?
We're getting there. I will say from our most recent map that we did this fall, we're still seeing deficits at the primary level. So for our elementary schools, and by primary, I mean particularly our first and second grade, who, if you count that back, they are the ones that were on screen learning those foundational skills. That is going to be our focus moving forward for this year. So to answer your question, beyond that, when we look at our fifth, fourth, third, we are in pretty good shape. So I could say that they have recovered, but there is definitely a focus group in the first and second grade range.
Okay, thank you.
Very similar to what I said on as far as our intermediate, our fourth and fifth I can't sit here and claim that, yeah, we've recovered all the way, because there are certainly focus areas and gaps to address. But I do feel, yes, we've certainly made progress, and programs like summer school certainly help that, especially the most intensive needs. And beyond that, just the support services that schools are offering here and now are going to help close that gap.
That's great, and huge thanks to you and your group in allocating resources and supporting our teachers, and also to all of our teachers for their diligence in an unprecedented situation and in closing that gap back.
And it'll be just like everything. It's continuous improvement.
Sure.
I don't know that we'll ever fully arrive. You just continue to plan, do, study, act over and over, and to try to meet those needs and make progress.
I did have a couple questions.
Sure.
And you can get back if you don't know the information off the top of your head. I know when Martha was here, it was a little easier because you could kind of tag team. I just had a question about the number of days the students attended, and about the cost per student. And then also if there were any actual gains. I know you said there was not the summer slide for some of those students, but if there were any, kind of gains as far as, to show the benefits of the program. So just really those three things.
Sure. I could speak to the days to begin with. It was a 6-week program, and Ms. Tracy, if you have anything to add, please do. At the elementary level, 3 days a week that they were doing that, half-day program for them. High school was 5 days a week for 3 weeks in June that it was in person, and then they transitioned, it was virtual in July that they finished up their Edgenuity courses. Cost per student, I wouldn't know that off the top of my head. I can get back to you on that. But when you say gains, that's certainly what illustrated there. That's what I was showing from fall to fall. I can get you exact numbers. I give you a percentage of students that made gains. As far as how much, I can get back to you on that in terms of the amount of gains or growth that they made.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions before he moves on? Alrighty.
I've mentioned this already. We've done our fall map, also our fall CERT assessment season starting out, and also coming up next month will be the first Kentucky Summative Assessment, KSA. We do have those. We're still in quality control phase, it's called, meaning that we have the data, but just triple checking for accuracy. That becomes public on October 18th. So I will be able to share that along with the second part of the CDIP next month. It is a whole new system, color codes and things like that I'll explain to you. As soon as I have those and able to share, I'll send a written report, and then I'll discuss further next month when I'm up here. One other thing, instructional, I wanted to mention was deeper learning. I believe I had mentioned this last month when I was up here. It's on the agenda this month as related to stipends. And the reason for that is we have a $55,700 grant. It's over a 3-year term. 2/3 of that money has to be spent on teacher stipends. So we have a 14-person team. 10 of those are teachers. And what we are doing is it's in the learning phase right now about what does deeper learning entail, and what is the direction that we're going to take, because it's a pretty large umbrella. 2 main things that we're going to focus on to begin with is that profile work or portrait work. We actually kick that off tomorrow, I should say, to where we are defining what competencies or what skills that we expect our students to have when they leave Woodford County Schools. We're going to stay away from the term graduate because people tend to think high school right away. We want this to be all encompassing and go all the way down to kindergarten. So you'll be hearing more about that. And then the second focus for this, and this is where the teachers really come into play, are deeper learning pedagogies and classroom experiences. So think project-based learning, collaborative learning, critical thinking, those type of things. So these teachers, I've told them that they're going to kind of specialize and experiment in a given area. They will pilot that specifically in this second semester and probably even into the fall to where they'll build capacity in that regard and kind of be resident experts moving forward so that we can spread that well throughout the district in regard to what deeper learning means and what that looks like in a classroom. So we're excited about that work coming up. Finally, I'll just go ahead into the equity part. This is pretty brief. We had our equity teams workshop on August 30th, and I said that this year it's all about building capacity once again and adding more to this. So we had 26 attendees with representation from all schools, and what our purpose for that one was, we wanted to brainstorm what diversity, equity, inclusion should look like in Woodford County schools, what it looks like now, and what we want it to look like in the future. We reviewed the equity action plan as it currently exists, and then we built what's called a rubric, a diversity, equity, inclusion rubric. So that is a tool that I can give to a school level team, and they can kind of rate themselves of where they're at, and how we've defined what that looks like, what that sounds like, what that feels like when you walk in our buildings. So next phase on that, we'll actually be doing school reviews. Members from the district level team will visit all 4 elementaries in one day. Later on in November, we'll go through the secondary schools and just see what kind of progress they're making, what kind of supports they need to make sure that that is well represented in our schools across the board. That concludes my report.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Asher. Does anyone have any follow-up questions? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Parent Square report from Ms. Bailey.
I love talking about Parent Square, and I mean that. I really do. Okay, Parent Square. Surely everyone's heard of it. I hope so. It is our district's new communications platform, and if you look right here, the way Parent Square markets itself as a unified, equitable communications platform. Before we get started, I do have a few people I want to recognize as just being absolutely instrumental in this effort, and that is, to begin with, was Mrs. Liz Pitcher and Mr. Bob Gibson. They were instrumental in investigating this product and discussing logistics about how we could implement it in our district. We all saw a need for this platform or one like it, and their know-how of the technology department and what it would take was absolutely instrumental. Next is Mrs. LaShannon Stratton, our district Infinite Campus coordinator. She is incredible, and she is necessary for all aspects of school, but she is especially necessary for Parent Square. There are many, many times where, because Parent Square is linked directly to Infinite Campus, that's where it gets all of its information, and if I encounter an issue in Parent Square, I simply shoot her an email and she's able to come up with the solution very quickly. It's so impressive how well she knows Infinite Campus. And then last but certainly not least is Dr. Josh Rayburn. He has the technology expertise. He also has a calm nature where I am more high-strung. So he can really help me as I encounter issues with Parent Square, and he is absolutely incredible. I also have asked Dr. Rayburn to interject in this presentation as he sees fit to provide the additional technology perspective if you all have any questions specifically about that. But we can go ahead and roll. So Parent Square markets itself as a single platform for everything from your district's mass notifications to conference signups and permission slips. It kind of has the macro and the micro view of what's going on in school communication. They also have these 4 pillars of it's a one central tool, whether you choose the app or the website version. A lot of people do both. I myself do both. It has 2-way parent engagement, which is absolutely fantastic. It's a very quick way for parents to contact teachers and likewise. The quick translations, they all occur within the Parent Square platform, and communication can occur via text, email, app notification, and voice call. When I was marketing it to the Woodford County community at first, I used this little sentence you see here in the green. It's direct communication with educators, urgent alerts, snow day announcements, field trip information, celebrations, arts updates, athletic news, and so much more, all in one place. We have a lot of good things to communicate. We have a lot of really important and critical things to communicate. And I think it's so nice to have a streamlined way to do that through Parent Square. So there are multiple ways to communicate with families. I kind of refer to this, and hopefully you all have seen it, as the Facebook news feed, right? So if I have two examples here, one is Huntertown and the other is Woodford County Middle School. If I have a child in both, this is going to be my news feed for my school. So I can quickly scroll through and see the student is involved in orchestra, the student since they are at Huntertown, I'm, as the parent, am getting requests for volunteers for Career Day and all sorts of good information. You see a little fall break notification down there. That was a very high appreciated one. One thing you can't see super well, but I did want to point out, so I'll read it to you, is for Woodford County Middle School, a teacher here, a math teacher, reminded parents and students that the unit test was coming up. And she said, our unit test is tomorrow. Be sure you are taking time tonight to practice with the study guide. The key is also posted so you can check your answers to your work. And a parent commented and said, thank you so much for this, because a lot of communication gets lost with teenagers sometimes. So parents really appreciated knowing directly there is a test coming up and this is how my student can succeed. Likewise, we have a music announcement down, and I've seen our arts teachers have been using this a lot in regards to auditions for school plays that are coming up, bring your instruments tomorrow, please don't forget, things like that. And last but certainly not least, you see the little events in the upper right-hand corner. That's a tool that I hope we begin utilizing even more. So if I'm a parent and have multiple kids, I can just toggle between my students and their schools and see all the events taking place. Some of the schools have chosen to use the newsletter platform option. Woodford County Middle School is one of them. I think it looks really nice, and it automatically translates. So this is an example. I went in and screenshot the exact same newsletter, just I changed my language setting from English to Spanish, so you can see it's the same information that parents are getting right at their fingertips.
That's fantastic.
It's really great, and the translation piece is top notch, but I do also like that schools, although it's one unified platform that we are asking schools to use, they still get the autonomy to decide how they choose to post and inform parents. Okay. The app, I don't know if anyone here prefers the app over, okay, we got some app users. So I do like the app. I think it's very helpful. I prefer to do it on my laptop, but that's just me. But here's an example of what it would look like on your app. And one thing I love in particular is you see I posted about fall break there at the bottom. If I click on that as a parent, it gives me a drop-down option that I can go ahead and add that to my Apple Calendar or my Android calendar or whatever I'm using. So the app will access your calendar and do that for you, which is really nice. And then the two notifications are just examples of what that would look like. If someone has chosen not to use the app or the website, they're still going to get really the pertinent information. It'll just come through text or email. All right, one more way to communicate through this platform is with alerts. So alerts are short logistical announcements that are relevant in real time, where a post would be more like a back to school message, or we are advertising about a science fair coming up, something like that. This is going to be a little more time is of the essence type piece of information. So the urgent alerts would be used for things and situations such as closures, critical threats, natural disasters, etc. If I were to send an urgent alert, it would be sent out as a text, a phone call, and an email. So this is really like something needs to be communicated right now, and it's urgent. There is no way with an urgent alert to toggle between those. Whereas a smart alert, I can choose what of that I want to add. So it's always going to go out as a text message. It might follow up with a phone call if that text message was not received for whatever reason. And then I, as the creator of the smart alert, can choose to add an optional email just to hit it again. And that's going to be more for, let's say we have a Saturday night event and weather is an issue, and I need to get that information out quickly. Around Saturday afternoon would be a good example.
Can I
Absolutely.
ask one question here?
Please.
So we did have an issue, obviously, that with the information going out in a timely manner, and I know I got a lot of feedback asking, would this kind of replace the one call? Mm-hmm. And I don't think it did. I don't think we used that feature, but going forward, that's the intent is
Yes.
if there is a school safety concern, it will be sent as an urgent alert and it will notify by all of those different platforms.
Yes, yes, yes. I posted it, and
No,
that was the incorrect use.
No, I don't mean that at all. I think parents were wondering, did they need to re-sign up for one call, or going forward, would this take that spot?
Yes, it will. But that's really what happened. Like, I should have done an alert. It's just a new platform.
We're all
I
learning.
posted it instead. We're all learning. Lesson learned.
We did actually send an email after the
Yep.
fact that when we realized that it was sent as a post, we took care of that and made sure to note that parents, if they wanted that digest versus the direct notification, we included the instructions on how to do that as well.
Yes, I think that was great. I just wanted to make sure that going forward, the one call is kind of obsolete. Nobody needs to take any action on that.
Exactly. One call is no longer, this has taken the place of one call.
Perfect.
And I know most of our principals, I would say probably all of our principals have used the phone call option. I have used it, and it is leaps and bounds easier than one call.
Great.
So I think it's a really, it's a quick thing. It's an easy thing. It's really user friendly too. And there is a way to translate phone calls as well,
Great.
which is
Yeah, and
especially
you're
nice.
definitely right. I use the app. My husband uses the laptop version. Everybody has a way that they like to get this information, and it's wonderful for that.
Yes, absolutely.
I have a quick question. So just going along with what we were just talking about, do you have to be signed up for Parent Square to get those urgent communications, or what would be the one call in the past? And are all families in the district signed up, or are there any families that are not signed up that we would have to reach in a different way?
That's an excellent question, and I will also look to you to follow up on this. But all of our families who are in Infinite Campus, they are a parent or legal guardian. So not all the emergency contacts are in Parent Square, but all of our parents are in Parent Square. We have their numbers, we have their emails. We have sent several rounds of invitations. It's just a quick little button that you go in and click through Parent Square to invite parents to come in and set up their account. And that is what gets them a push notification or a text message to invite them, or an email to invite them to do that. Once they do that, it is really easy communication. But until they do that, they do, to my understanding, still get those urgent alerts.
So one of the things to note is that one call did not sync 100% with Infinite Campus. So we would make manual requests to change information and change phone numbers, email addresses, and everything else. Whereas now, because we're syncing directly with Infinite Campus, we're actually able to shore up our data with inside Infinite Campus so that we can get that information straight and have it there the whole time. But like Ms. Bailey said, it is 100%. Even if you don't sign up, you still get that communication if your number is correct in Infinite Campus.
That's wonderful. I just wanted to make sure for folks that didn't sign up for Parent Square, they were still getting the emergency or the urgent messages. That's wonderful.
Yes.
And then my second question is, I'm not sure with one call, I know we used it for a number of years. I'm not sure what the cost associated with that was, if there was a cost. But is there a cost associated with Parent Square? And if so, how much is that?
There is a cost associated with Parent Square, and it is coming out of a few different pots, I believe, right? We had some grants and.
Cost than what one call was. But with that being said, we have streamlined communication more with our Parent Square because of the translation piece and not having to be signed up to get the emergency and urgent alerts.
Well, and it's also a huge time saver for our staff, not having to create a sign-up genius for this event, to send out permission slips. I've had my first two Parent Square permission slips that you just click and it's easy and it's sent back. And so there's cost savings in not having printed materials, as well as the time on our staff hours, I would say.
Right. Yes, I'm sure we could get you this exact specific number.
It was when we approved it, probably in May or June.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind to send it to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And kudos to Mr. Gibson for talking them down, even. It was my first sales pitch with Bob Gibson. That was an experience.
I think Ms. Bailey needs to talk real quick about one incident at the elementary school back to school EL night.
Oh, yes, I have that coming. Well, I don't have it. A screenshot, but I have it to talk about. Yeah. It's very beautiful. Okay, so moving on to some other ways to communicate, we have posts and direct messages. Posts are either going to go out to the entire school, the entire district, or an entire classroom. So this is where I've encouraged teachers to kind of create an online classroom experience for their parents and their students as well. So if I am a teacher and we had a really cool activity going on that day, I think parents would enjoy seeing photos. I can send it specifically to my homeroom class. Parents can see their students engaging in whatever activity or lesson that was. They can appreciate, they can thank the teacher for posting that, and it lives in their online classroom. Also, if you remember back on the Facebook news feed, we had an elementary school asking for volunteers to be on their career day. That was through a post to the whole school. So the poster can see who has commented, who has liked or appreciated the post, and how many people it has reached. Those are the only people who can see that. So that means that parents can't see other parents commenting. So if a parent has a question, whether it be one that's more private or sensitive or not, it could be more generic, but it's going to be a private conversation between the poster and the parent, which I think parents are enjoying that. And yep, they just go right in and click reply. Also, direct messages. Now, this I do use on my phone primarily because it feels kind of like a text message. I've used it to communicate with parents that I'd be sending a photo form home with their student because their child did not have one on hand. I've used it with some of our seniors to set up different photo shoots, if you will, like for our National Merit semifinalists recently. I used Parent Square to do that, and we had a message going to try and figure out a time that worked best for them. So it's just quick, it's easy. Kids are using it because they use their phones, and I hope that students are latching on. It seems like some are, which is great. Okay, and then we have a few by the numbers, which I just thought were cool. So we have 4,007 parents receiving emails. 595 have chosen to receive their information as text messages. We've sent 128 smart alerts since August 1st, 892 posts throughout the district. 9,696 direct messages have gone out, whether that be from teachers to parents or vice versa. 400 photos or videos have been posted. We've shared 41 files, so an example of this would be the bus routes were shared as files and live on the platform still. We've had 45 calendar events, and then 81 volunteers have signed up through Parent Square since August. So that was by the numbers, and this is more the impact it's having on our district. Families have expressed gratitude for increased communication. I monitor, I've kind of toned back on this just as I've needed to take a step back. But I was monitoring a lot of the comments, and just to see people, like the example of the mother commenting on the test post, to see people saying, thank you so much for this, or I appreciate this increased communication has been really cool. Because if I have a child in elementary, middle, and high school, we want it to be a similar experience. We want, I don't want one, the parent of multiple students to feel like, well, why am I not hearing as much here? Or I'm hearing a lot here, or whatnot. So it's been really cool to get more of an even amount of communication across the district. Really, probably most importantly, is our families who speak languages other than English feel more informed and connected to this school. So Dr. Rayburn mentioned at one of the EL family nights, I was present at most of those to get parents set up on their Parent Square account. And there was one night in particular where it had been a long day, and we had a lot of Parent Square stuff go really smoothly, and then we had some hiccups. And I was working one-on-one with a parent, an EL parent, and we got it. She had her phone right here, and she started seeing in her language all the things come through. And Carmen Wilcox was standing right there, and so they were chatting, and I was just watching. And to see her face light up and point and look and talk to Carmen, and Carmen looked to me with kind of tears in her eyes and said she's noticing all the things she's seeing. And two examples were, one, she saw a advertisement for t-shirts. And she said, I've always wanted to buy my child a t-shirt of their school, and I never knew how to do it. And it's right here. Now I know how. And the other thing she said was she saw a picture day announcement. And she said, my child every year is in a t-shirt for picture day because I never know when it is. And now my child can be in a little tie and just have him look how I want him to look for his school picture day, which was a really special moment and very much so why we did this. Increased communication due to the ease of posting and the one platform. I think Ms. Bradley mentioned that, where it's very easy to go in and to have a permission slip. Our principals are learning that now. And there's other, like the volunteer signups, the creating an event. We can also ask for RSVPs on those events. It makes things very easy. I'm really excited for social media to be the platform where we celebrate our students, staff, and schools. Now that we have Parent Square and we can focus information that needs to stay within Woodford County Schools community. There's some private information we talk about, the example of the high school being one of them. We need to give that information to the people who need to know, which is our stakeholders. So now we can really use Facebook and Twitter and Instagram as a place to celebrate all the good things and not really have to, there's a lot of layers that come with sharing stuff like that, serious stuff on Facebook. And I'm excited for Parent Square to be the communication platform and Facebook to be us bragging on ourselves and really highlighting all the good stuff. Lastly, this ties in. Parent Square will also serve as a platform in which we celebrate, but is ultimately for increased and effective communication. That is all I have on my best friend, Parent Square. If you all have any questions, I'm happy to answer them or to look to Dr. Rayburn to answer them.
Ms. Bailey, I just wish you could get excited about the things that you present to us.
It really weighs me down.
I know it. No, it's been great. I having kids in multiple schools, it does everything that you've said. It streamlines those things. I've had the permission slips. We had one that a middle school class was watching a movie that they wanted to make sure that all the parents were okay with the content. And that was fantastic. It makes it much faster for them to get that feedback from parents than sending the paper home that our kids don't give to us, and it lives crumpled up under their binders in their backpack, and then they get to that event and they don't know if they're allowed to do it or not, and it creates the chaos that ensues. So things like that, it's wonderful. I've done a couple volunteer signups on it. It's just a really great platform so far.
Absolutely. I've become really good friends with the service department at Parent Square, and we joke that the more questions I get about Parent Square, the more I learn about it and the more convinced I am that it's the product for us. So we definitely have had some hiccups. Like, it hasn't been perfect, but I think it's been really good. And the more comfortable we all get with it and to just integrating it into our schools, I think it's only going to get better. And Carmen also, it's cool to see Carmen talk about it, our migrant coordinator. She's excited to see the impact it will have on the families she serves.
That's great. Ms. Glass, any input?
Only one other question. I too love Parent Square. I love all the information in one place. So if we were to encounter parents or families that really have no idea how to sign up for Parent Square, never heard of Parent Square, just now hearing about it, what is the the way that we should direct them if they were first time to sign up? I mean, is that on the website? Do they contact your office? Like, how would
Yeah.
the best way to do that?
So that's a really good question. They can get on parentsquare.com and it's immediately going to take them to the sign up. The issue is they have to know and enter correctly either the phone number or the email that is in Infinite Campus. And actually, I have encountered a few times where maybe through their online registration, just one letter is off. And if they're having issues, a lot of times that is it. Otherwise, I am always happy to take that call. They've slowed down as more people have gotten the platform, but you can certainly direct them to me or direct them to the school front office and they can reach out to me. But really and truly just going to parentsquare.com or downloading that app and using their email is a quick way to do it, or checking their spam folder in their email, because there should be several invitations that have come through. And my email is not sensitive, but I know some inboxes are of what it sends to spam. Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Ms. Glass. Ms. McHale?
I love it as well with multiple kids. I wish I had it sooner, trying to manage through Tiger Tails and Buzzmail and all the different things. I think it's great. I don't think we can communicate enough. So I've seen a few people say, geez, how come I didn't see this another time, you know, and kind of joking about it. But I think that's great when people are saying, yeah, gosh, I already know about this. So I think that's really good news. The only thing is it probably needs to have like a shock feature on it, because I still forgot picture day.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Springate?
No, just thank you so much. You know, I always appreciate that you're willing to try new things and look at new things, and then you have the little learning bumps, and just to kind of acknowledge, move on, and, you know, do better next time. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Learning curve for sure.
All
Long
right.
one.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Thank you for
My
everything
pleasure.
you do, and thank you for your presentation. That was great.
Thank you all.
All right, Mr. Mattingly, I'm going to ask you if we can let Mr. Smith go ahead of you, because he has got to pick up his son. So we'll move next to the treasurer's report. 7:15.
Thank you. So I'm going to run through the budget, the balance sheet rather, for the month of August real quickly, just kind of talk about the fund balances. We'll start with the general fund. The fund balance and liabilities is $8.226 million. The Fund 2 is $1.822 million. Fund 21, which is the district activity fund, has $427,000 fund balance. Fund 25, which is a school activity fund, has a $411,000 fund balance. The capital outlay has $1.282 million. The building fund has $1.45 million in it. The construction fund has $74,473,890. I will just add, as you're aware, that the board approved the entering into the flexible repurchase agreement. So Ms. Murchis with Baird put that out for bid. The winning bid wound up being 3.11%, and we're going to wind up recovering about $2.7 million in interest over the life of this for the next couple of years. So
That's great.
that'll go directly back into the project. So another win there. The Fund 400 fund balance is $105,000, and again, that's purely a pass-through fund for the debt service. The food service fund has $1.228 million in there, and then the daycare operation has $512,000 fund balance in that one. I know that was quick. Are there any questions on the treasurer report for the balance sheets?
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And I should clarify, to approve the treasurer's report and the August financial report.
I do have some questions about the August financial report.
Okay.
And I didn't know if other people had questions, if they want to go first.
No, go
or-
ahead.
Okay. The first question I have is, I noticed that a column on the Munis report has been deleted that showed our last year's information. And I wanted to ask that we put that back on there. It's helpful for me to be able to see last year versus this year, to provide some context and some oversight and accountability. So is that something we could just add back in?
Well, I've not deleted any columns. The reports are as Munis produces them, so I do not alter them in any way. So I'm not familiar with what you're saying has been removed because
Well, if you look at the reports that we've received over the past year or so, the very first column was a last year column, and it would show like the beginning balance, where we're at this month,
Are you
last
referring
year.
to the balance sheet or the annual financial?
The actual financial Munis monthly report.
Okay. So the columns, there's a month-to-date column, a year-to-date column, a budget appropriation column, and then the available budget column.
Correct. And then there used to be a column at the very beginning, and it showed our last year's information. So you could look last year at this time where we were at in the different categories, and it helped put context and also to kind of compare where we were, where we're at, and to provide some, oversight and just kind of accountability, some context.
Okay. I'll check the settings. I'm not aware of a setting. There may be a setting somewhere that was changed. We recently did an upgrade in May that Tyler put out, so there may be something that was defaulted and turned off, but I'll definitely look at that. But
Okay.
I do not remove anything from these reports. They're generated as.
That column was just
as
gone.
they
I was
are.
kind of
Yeah,
surprised.
yeah.
So
I'll definitely look into that, though.
thank you. The next question I have is, I had asked for the annual financial report at last month's open meeting, and then I followed up with a request and an email to Mr. Atkins about that. And I just wanted to see, is there a reason why that hasn't been provided to the board?
No, I can email that tomorrow to you directly.
Okay, thank you.
I would just say the unaudited annual financial report is essentially, it's immaterially different from the June financial treasurer report that we issue. So, there's immaterial differences there, but I'd be glad to send that out to you tomorrow.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And then I just have a question. If you look at page 1 of the monthly report, the Munis report, it's just easier for me to use that one. That's the one I like to look at.
Okay.
I noticed that our beginning balance was right at $10 million.
That's correct.
Okay, and that's an increase of about 2.8 million over our beginning balance last year. Where did this additional $2.8 million come from?
I can't say, having not been here most of the year last year. Obviously, it would have to do with expenditures did not exceed the revenues that were taken in. That's how the fund balance grows, obviously. So I'm not sure what caused that exactly. I do know that beginning balance, that is part of the defeasance dollars that we will use to reduce the debt when we did the bond issue. So that is where that debt service is coming from, is out of that $10 million.
And where is that? Is that the $2.7 million debt payment that's reflected on this report in the last column?
In the last, what page is that?
Just page 1, I'm sorry. You have listed, I guess it's a debt payment of $2.782 $2,782,000.
Which document are we looking at?
The Munis monthly report, page 1.
Oh, so you're referencing the 2.782 on the very top line?
Yes,
No,
the very.
So what that reflects is the difference between the year-to-date actual and what's in the budget. And so that 2.782 is the difference between those two numbers. And so, yes, that is exactly where that debt defeasance, the number is approximately $2.4 million is what we talked about at the previous meetings, and that's where that will come from, yes.
Okay, and is that reflected anywhere on the report, like in the building or?
No, because it's not been recorded yet, so.
Okay, so it's just not in
It
there.
has been made, it's just not been recorded yet.
Okay, so that hasn't been recorded. So it looks like that leaves us with a beginning balance. The beginning balance on July 1 was the $10 million. And then this leaves about 7.2 million after you take that debt payment out?
Correct.
Okay. But the contingency listed in the same document on the last page is 5.5 million. So where is that remaining $1.6 million?
It's spread out through the expenditures in the budget.
Perfect. And then are we going to talk about ESSER separately?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah. And back to the contingency real quickly, we'll talk about it in the budget presentation, but the contingency is going to end, or it's budgeted at $5.5 million, which is the highest contingency amount that the district has had in the 10 or 11 years that I researched, with the exception of FY21. So
we started out this year with a working balance of around 10 million, and we're going to end the fiscal year for the working budget around 5.5 in the contingency.
no,
The budget amount is not the same as the contingency fund. The contingency is what's left after you pay everything that's in the budget.
Correct, and we started out this year on July 1 with a $10 million working budget, which includes that contingency, which was around 7.2 million from last year, is what was listed on our documents.
Well, the contingency is a different thing than the beginning balance entirely. We budget the contingency based on the multitude of factors, but the contingency and the beginning balance are two totally separate items.
Correct, but I'm just,
We can budget a contingency of, I could have budgeted a contingency of $10 million in there, but the difference has to come from some of the line items throughout the budget. So, you know, that's just kind of KDE recommends 2%. If you take the food service and the general fund revenues and you apply 2%, that's what their recommendation is as a floor for the contingency. But, you know, we want to have, I think I calculated it one time, a 10% contingency for a school district would equate to about 6 weeks of operating expenses. And so this $5.5 million contingency is approximately a 10% contingency amount. So I don't think that that's unreasonable for a contingency amount for this district. So
yeah, and I'm just trying to get the numbers down so that we can kind of understand what we're talking about.
Yep.
And so I just appreciate the clarification, and it sounds like that's something we're going to talk about when we get to the working budget.
Sure. As far as the ESSER, you mentioned about the ESSER. So in the ESSER 2, there's $151,652 available in ESSER 2. And in the ESSER 3, there's $1,712,478 remaining in the ESSER 3 monies.
Do you know if we're planning on using the ESSER money to cover or supplant our general operating expenses again this year?
From my understanding, the plan as outlined in GMAP that KDE approved is there's a multitude of expenditures with things like software purchases that the schools were, I guess, talked through the RFP process. There's technology purchases that were agreed upon. There's additional instructional aids, I think, that were paid for, things to cover summer schools to help with the learning recovery gap that exists after COVID. So
can you share that list for the remaining money? I guess you said it's about 1.7 million in ESSER 3, and then just a little bit left in ESSER 2. Is that something you could share?
The GMAP is publicly available.
It is, and it has a big long list of, you know, multiple pages. It doesn't say what has been spent, what it was spent on, and our ESSER plan has changed. We haven't really had oversight of that. That's just been something that's done at central office, and really I don't even know that we find out about it until after the fact that this was paid or that was paid. And so since there have been changes and there have been expenditures, it would be nice to know what the remaining 1.7 in ESSER 3 will be covering, just a kind of a list.
And I can appreciate wanting that, but I want to make sure that we're careful to say that our central office employees work hand in glove with the principals at the schools to identify the needs for those ESSER funds. and that those are the things that we're spending that money on, and those were identified and planned in the GMAP. And KDE has repeatedly gone over our ESSER fund reports and said that, you know, everything that we're using them on is an appropriate use of those funds.
And again, we did have those discussions when Mr. Hawkins was here, and we did vote on a plan. It wasn't followed. And we did do a lot of expenditures at the school level for ESSER 2, but they weren't actually used with ESSER 2. It somehow got shifted to ESSER 3. And so that's why I think it would just be a good idea to kind of look at that list.
Okay.
I will say, according to OEA, it was followed.
Okay. We need to move on. So there's a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report and August financial report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes 3-1. We'll now move on to item E, Mr. Smith, and that is to approve the 2022-2023 working budget. Is there a motion to approve this document as provided on the agenda? And then we'll have Mr. Smith go through some of this.
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale, and is there a second by Ms. Glass? All right, and any discussion on the working budget? Mr. Smith, is there anything that you would like to note that has changed substantively from our last approval?
Very little has changed. The only thing that I changed was the SEEK was adjusted down just very slightly. KDE adjusted that a couple of weeks ago, and then we made adjustments for the change in the revenue. So
the SEEK was adjusted down based on the assessment?
yes.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions on that?
I do have some questions, but I'm happy to let everyone else ask their questions first.
No, go ahead.
Do you all have any questions? It may
Go ahead.
answer some of mine. Okay, let's see. I guess the first question I have is on page 3 of the presentation document.
Okay.
It says that the capital outlay working budget is, for Fund 310, is $745,213.
Correct.
How much of that is restricted?
It's all restricted.
So that's all restricted for the,
Capital outlay and the building fund 320 are restricted by nature 100%. They're,
how much is restricted from our general fund, I mean?
none of that is from the general fund.
Okay, and that's all capital outlay, so that's
Yeah.
80% of our capital outlay is $745,000 a year?
No, that's 100% of what's in the capital outlay fund. There's some carryover from last year. All the capital outlay was not utilized last year. It will be once we go through the bond defeasance, and all those things are recorded, but there was $745,000 in revenue in the capital outlay fund as of July 1 of FY '23.
I guess I didn't ask the question right. What I'm wondering is how much of that amount is restricted for the new high school project?
It's all restricted for the high school for this year.
And is that the amount that's going to be restricted for the next 30-plus years?
No,
So that will change?
yes.
But will it always be 80% of our capital outlay for the next 30-plus years?
So the 80% only applies to bonding capacity. You're only allowed to bond based on 80% of your capital outlay funds. So that's the only place the 80% applies. The $745,000 is the total capital outlay dollars that we get from KDE plus the carryover that was in
So there
the
was some
fund at the
carryover,
beginning
yeah.
of the year. So we approved to defease the over $4 million in debt. $2.4 million came from the general fund. The remainder came from your capital outlay and your building fund. So that's what those monies are used for. When you say they're restricted for the high school, they're not restricted for a project. They're restricted for debt service. Our bonding payments, our debt service payments that we're required to pay every year, we utilize the building fund 320 first and foremost because those are the most restricted dollars. If there's debt service that requires more money, we take those funds from the capital outlay fund, which are less restrictive. If that consumes both Fund 320 and Fund 310, then we have to take it from somewhere else, which is, when you get into some of the general fund bond issues, that's kind of how all that works together.
And when we did our bond, we agreed to restrict 80% of our capital outlay for the high school project for the next 30-plus years, or no? It's not?
No, the
Not-
80% doesn't have, well, when you sold bonds, when Kelly Mercich sold the bonds and did the bond calculation, the bonding capacity that we did could only be based on 80%. But that doesn't mean we can't spend more than 80% for bond payments.
Right, but does that mean that the 80% is absolutely restricted for that? For the next 30 years or so?
No, it
Well,
does
and-
not mean that.
And capital outlay changes each
It's all-
year
It's all
dependent.
fluid based on your debt service. Your debt service is not a stagnant number every year. It's just like any other debt service. If you look at our debt schedule, we'll have $4.5 million in debt service this year. Next year, it may be $5 million, it may be $4 million. So it fluctuates based on your debt service because we're paying for bonds that were issued many years ago. And so as those debts fall off and you acquire new debt, your debt service changes. So for me to say that 80% of this is restricted for the next 30 years would be incorrect, so.
Okay, but we did have to put that on our paperwork to be able to get the $77 million bond, or no?
No, so as of the time that we sold the bonds, they look at the total amount of capital outlay in your building fund to determine how much debt you can pay for. They only allow you.
Up to 80%.
Up to 80%.
Right.
And that's where that 80% calculation comes from. And it only applied to the bond issue that we sold on August 3rd,
For the new high school.
2022. Next year, if we went to sell more bonds, that number would be calculated based on our capital outlay and building fund dollars at that time, 80% of those dollars. So it's fluid every year based on your capacity to pay debt.
Okay. And then I guess on the next page, page 4, our beginning balance, should that be the $10 million figure since that was on July 1? Our beginning balance was 10 million.
So I just left the budget at 7.2 million because we have talked multiple times now. The $10 million beginning balance, $2.4 million of that's going to be gone towards defeasing of debt. So
Right, but a lot of the money that from the balance is going to be spent over this year. So it just seems like that should really be the $10 million beginning balance because that's what it was on July 1.
Well, it's a budget. Budgets aren't exact. You could budget $10 million there and then add an additional line in the expenditures for the 2.4. It'll wash out as far as I'm concerned. That there's no advantage to budgeting that or not budgeting it really. So
Yeah, I just think it's important to be, just upfront and very transparent and say our beginning balance on July 1 was the $10 million. We've spent some of it, I understand that, or we're planning to spend some of it on the high school, I understand that. It just, to me, makes more sense to say on July 1, this was our beginning balance. And so I just wanted to check on that. Let's see, the next question I have is on page, I can't even see the page 5.
Okay.
That deals with the different working budgets for the different categories.
yes.
If you look at this, it looks like our instructional budget is going up by $4.1 million from last year to this year.
Well, I'm not sure what you're comparing that to. I don't know where are you getting the $4 million?
Last year, our instructional budget,
But what document are you referring to when you talk about the instructional budget for last year?
I went back and looked at our actuals.
Okay.
And so on our actuals, it's up $4,152,123
Okay.
from our actuals of last year. And I know this is an estimate for next year. And so what I'm wondering is why we are saying it's going to increase $4.1 million. Because if you look at last year's actuals for fiscal year 22, And compare that to fiscal year 21, it actually decreased by $1.6 million. And it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. I'm trying to kind of figure that out. Is anyone else alarmed that our instructional budget is estimated to go up over $4 million from this year to next?
I'm looking at the instructional support services. That number isn't even 4 million to start.
The very first number for instruction is now estimated to be, planning to be, budgeted to be 25 million. Last year's actual numbers that came in was $4 million less. And the year before that was $1.6 million less. And so it very much concerns me and worries me when I see a jump of $4 million there. And I'm just asking about that, considering the actual numbers from 21 to 22 went down $1.6 million. Now from 22 to 23, they're jumping up by over $4 million.
And I say this, I feel like almost every month. If we have questions that are this nuanced, that you're pulling from multiple documents, if we could submit those in advance so that the board members can look and familiarize ourselves with the numbers that you're comparing, and Mr. Smith and Mr. Adkins can look and have these answers prepared. We got the agenda a week ago, and to my knowledge, you haven't sent any of these questions in advance. And when you say, you're comparing to this number and none of us have had time to look at it, it makes it very difficult for all of us as well as our professionals to answer the questions that you have. If your actual intent is to get answers to these questions, I don't understand why you won't submit them in advance.
Number one, I do submit things in advance. And again, I don't receive them back, just like the annual financial report that I talked about at the very beginning. Number two, the questions I'm asking are questions about this year versus last year. I looked the information up. Everyone else can look the information up too. We don't get the agenda out a week or 2 weeks in advance. I think some of these documents were not posted until the 23rd, which was Friday. And so what I did was I just sat down with the budget, with the numbers that are projected, and I compared that to the actual numbers that came in last year. Anybody can do that. It's not, I'm not doing anything magical. And again, I think that it's part of our duty as a school board member to look at the budgeted numbers. And if you've got a $4 million increase in instruction, to just ask that question. It's not nuanced, it's not detailed, it's not why is this off by a penny. It is a $4 million jump. It went down. And these are things that I've brought up at other meetings. If you go back and listen to the recordings, I've talked about this instruction line item multiple times at meetings. Multiple times I've asked the questions. They just haven't been received. The answers haven't been received. And I think that the place for those answers to be received is in an open meeting so that the public too can understand why is that going up by $4 million.
I have never argued that the transparency of these things shouldn't be done in meetings. I'm just saying, did you submit these particular questions?
I have submitted questions multiple
Springate,
times
did
on
you
financial
submit-
questions. And again, these are not detailed questions. They're asking about this working budget versus the document, the actual year-end financial report that I did ask for and didn't receive from last year. So it's not comparing crazy things. It's saying, last year you budgeted this at $4 million less. Why are we guessing that it might be $4 million more? And again, I appreciate you asking if I've emailed it. I have a stack of emails on financial questions that I've asked over the past few years since Mr. Atkins became superintendent with the former finance officer. And again, I didn't receive the annual financial report. We got this information.
If you didn't
attachments,
receive it, then how are you referencing it?
because I went back and looked at our monthly reports from different meetings from June.
So if you had access to it, then how is it an
It's
issue that
not,
it
a
hasn't
monthly
been sent?
report is not an annual financial report. They are different items.
And you just referenced the
And
annual.
again, I don't really know that going back and forth makes a whole lot of sense.
I don't
I'm
think so
asking
either.
why the instruction guesstimate is up by $4 million.
When you can't come out on the top, you don't want to go back and forth.
I'm not really sure why we can't answer this question.
Every board member here received an email saying, if you have questions, we're more than happy to sit down with you. Mr. Smith would be more than happy to sit down with you instead of coming in here and being blindsided. I've worked with several school boards in my career, and I have never
work with a school board member that wanted to do what was best for a school system, that would not sit down prior to a meeting and ask our questions.
Again, I'm asking why this is up by $4 million. It is not a detailed, nuanced question. Last year, we all know what was spent on instruction. We have access to that. It's not a hidden number. It's not a small rounding number. I'm simply asking, why are we estimating a $4 million increase there? Still haven't received the answer. And again, after we leave the meetings, it doesn't get emailed to me or the other board members. The answers are not made. When folks stand up and ask financial questions, they are not answered. They're not answered in the meeting. They're not answered after the meeting. They're not answered by email, and they're not answered in the next meeting. So
Well, today's your lucky day because I'm going to answer it right now for you.
thank you.
If you look at page 5 on the working budget report that was submitted, the salaries and the personnel went up approximately $2 million. You know, obviously, we budgeted for salary increases for the coming year based on giving the 2%, trying to reward our teachers for the hard work that they give. I would assume that we would want the $2 million, the $4 million increase in instruction and not some other category on the budget, since that is the business that we are in, instruction. Some of the rest of it is on behalf payments, which are non-cash issues. We don't touch cash. We have to budget based on salaries. So if salaries go up, on behalf goes up. We never spend the first dollar of that. So the difference between 6.9 million and 5.7 is adjusted in on behalf payments, which don't have anything to do with what we're actually spending. We budgeted, we basically doubled the supply category for the teachers, so hopefully that they can get the materials that they need in the classrooms for the instructional purposes of the students. And so that's basically your $4 million in 4 lines on page 5.
And again, I know we've had some actual payroll run this year. So we've had a couple months, we're in school now. So is that going to be $2 million increase there? Is that firm number, or is that still kind of a guesstimate?
It's a budget. Budgets are not exact, and so we run pretty hard estimates when we do the tentative budget in May based on what the variables are that we think we're going to give as far as wage increases. And so it won't be exact, but I think it's going to be somewhat close.
How close do you think it'll be? Within a couple 100,000, $1 million?
I couldn't, I
Because
don't know.
we've had payroll a couple times, I know, so
Unfortunately, I don't have how much those are every time.
that's okay,
answer
that's okay.
that.
I'm just wondering, you know, that should give everybody pause when you look at a category going up by $4 million in 1 year, especially when it went down by $1.6 million last
Where would
year.
you recommend that I put the overages at then, if that doesn't satisfy you to put them in the instructional category?
Well, I think it's important that we're not taking money and hiding it throughout the working budget
Nobody's
because,
hiding any money.
because,
I take that, I'm insulted by that. I'm not hiding anything. We've gone through these numbers ad nauseum at these board meetings, and I find it insulting that you indicate that I'm trying to hide or not be transparent with anything that I've ever done for the Woodford County Board of Education, because that is absolutely not true.
when we have estimates that are, you know, millions of dollars different from the end of the year actuals, then I don't know if there's a better word than just kind of hiding it in the weeds of the budget. I don't know what other words you would use.
How am I hiding it? By illustrating it on the budget report. It's not hiding. It's right there for you to look at and ascertain where the numbers are. How am I hiding anything?
What I'm saying is, if we
You're
don't have a
saying that I'm
true
hiding
number,
money on
if we
this
don't have a
report.
true number of what we think the year is going to end with, or what's going to be the beginning balance,
Ms.
and then
Brigade,
those numbers are
I
off
think
somewhat.
Mr. Smith said that that is his best estimate as of today.
And again,
As of today. So if
I
you ask the
appreciate your
question
answer.
again next month, it might be a little different based on changes in the district from this month to next month. As in 6 months, it might be a little different based on what's happened from today to 6 months.
and again,
He
Ms.
has given
McHale,
you an
$1.6
estimate.
million
He has
last
given you
year
the
less,
reconciliation.
and it's up by 4 as a guesstimate. I thought she was finished speaking. And again, I just want the estimates to be close to the actual amount because I think that's important for us to budget. We can't budget, we can't plan, when, estimates are off by millions and millions of dollars. And if you look at,
You don't know
What-
that the estimates are off by millions and millions.
I
of
really
dollars. You're
don't.
only
That's what I'm
speculating.
asking. That's
Well,
why I'm
who
asking.
does? Who amongst us does know what the exact number is going to wind up being?
It doesn't have
None
to be
of us
exact,
do.
but you've done payroll a couple of times this year, so you should have kind of a good idea of what the cost of staffing is going to be. That's all I'm saying. The other thing that I wondered about was, if you look at this, it looks like the expenses you think are going to be around $45 million. Last year, it was around $38 million. So that's a difference of $6.7 million.
And again,
Of
there are several
expenses.
variables, one being the on behalf.
But the on behalf's a flow-through, right? So whatever we get
It-
from the
it is a
state,
flow-through, but
we'll cover, it'll
directly
zero out.
affects- It directly affects the total revenues and the expenses that are reflected on the budget.
You're only looking at part of it, so it absolutely needs to be considered if you're only looking at the expenses. If you're looking at the net, then yes, that is an absolutely correct statement. It's a flow-through. But you're looking at the expenses, so that's absolutely a reconciling item and something that needs to be considered, even for what you're discussing.
Right, and comparing apples to apples, last year, after things were reconciled, the number, apples to apples, was this year 45 million, last year 38 million. That's a difference of $6.7 million. So either we have money kind of just stored in, hidden up in these estimates for the working budget expenses, or we're looking at a massive deficit of around $1.6 million. I don't know which it is, but again, I'm asking the question so we can kind of find out and be able to provide accountability, to be able to provide financial oversight, to be able to understand what is going on here. I understand conservative budgeting, and I appreciate that.
Mrs. Springate, I would ask that you avoid insulting our employees by insinuating that anyone is hiding or doing anything.
Where is the money then, Miss Bradley? Where is that?
They have
Why are we
explained to you, I
estimating?
remember at our last budget approval,
No.
they talked about the increase in utility expenditures going up, the increase in inflation, the raises that we have approved, the programs that we continue to add. These are costs that are associated with running our district. And to imply that anyone is doing something wrong and hiding money and to quote, putting things in the weeds, it's wrong. It's a disservice to our employees. It's a disservice to the community when you make these accusations and you haven't given people a chance to either have the materials in advance or to answer without the insinuation that they're doing something wrong. Now, I'm going to ask.
Well, I would
or-
just
I'm
like to
sorry, I'm
say,
gonna
I am not
finish.
insinuating anybody did anything wrong.
You
I'm
absolutely
asking a
are.
question. If you could not
I'm
interrupt me,
actually going to
please.
finish my sentence. We're going to have a recess because Mr. Smith has to go and pick his son up.
And
So
I would
we will
like to
rejoin-
respond to what you just said. I am not in any way trying to attack Mr. Smith. I'm simply looking through the working budget, comparing it to our last year's numbers. I'm not making this emotional or accusatory. I think you might be taking it that way. However, I'm just asking questions about a $6.7 million difference from last year to this year, and that should really scare us. That should be something that we're talking about. That should be something that we are getting explained to us, because we have to provide oversight.
Okay,
we have
we're
to
gonna have a
understand this information.
recess.
This is the
For an
second finance
unspecified
officer
time.
that Ms. Springate does not share the same finance philosophies with him.
I don't know, are you going to? We're having a recess.
Okay, thank you.
budget discussion without Mr. Smith here, and we can't move on to another agenda item without voting on the budget.
Then why can't we just vote on the budget and move on?
I assumed you still have more questions.
I mean, I asked the majority of my questions, and they were all questions from the 2 documents that Mr. Smith provided for tonight's meeting. I'm fine with moving on. I don't know why we would, I don't know what purpose it would serve to wait and not.
So you're ready to vote? You don't have any more questions on the budget?
Well, Mr. Smith isn't here, so.
Mr. Smith's coming back.
I don't think there's any need for him to come back. I mean, I've asked all the questions. All my questions were in reference to the 2 documents Mr. Smith attached to tonight's agenda. One was the slides, the 4 slides, 5 slides, and one was the Munis report that had the working budget report for 21, 22, and 23. So that's where all the questions came from. And I'm happy to go ahead and move on. I definitely don't want to have a extended recess.
Okay. As long as you feel like you've had ample opportunity to ask all of the questions that you wanted to, so that we don't have to, revisit that they weren't all addressed.
I'm absolutely ready for us to reconvene the meeting and move on. It was a long recess, and I think it'll be a long night. And I know everybody's got work and school tomorrow, so I'm not sure what purpose it would serve to just stay in.
Okay. All right, then we will reconvene and vote on the item E. There's a motion and a second to approve the 2022-2023 working budget. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes 3-1. We had initially scheduled to move Mr. Smith's items up, but we'll leave them where they are now and go back to the opportunity for audience or public comment. There are no submitted or signed up for public comments, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor?
Can I just ask
I'm sorry.
one quick question? Whoops, sorry. One quick question. On the surplus property, have we gone through any furniture and fixtures and identified anything that could be donated still to?
The one, we got the furniture and fixtures from Southside and from Simmons. And
Okay.
it's already been delivered.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And we have asked about some of the things that we have now, and they're really desks and tables are what they were needing.
Okay.
But we do have Mr. Mattingly's presentation.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Yes.
I'm sure he
Let's-
was sitting
let's-
over there with his head down, not want to make eye contact at this point.
Do we need to vote on the consent?
We do, yes. And I wanted to thank, we had a really hearty list of donations this month. So thank you to everyone in the community that donated and support. I saw a lot of donations for Simmons for their run for DC and several others, considerable donations. So we are blessed. I think the donations were reported for the food service funds and things like that. So thank you to everyone for your support of our school system. It's definitely appreciated. So there's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. The next item will be Mr. Mattingly's presentation.
Well, it's not much, and I'll go fast.
You're fine.
Good
We're here to
evening.
hear about it.
Good evening, welcome to the middle school. Sorry I was a little bit late, I should have said that at the beginning. Josh, I'll follow your lead. So I just thought, beginning of the year, I'd give you a little bit of an overview of some of the big things that we're working on at the middle school or focused on, and then if you have any questions, just let me know. So the first thing I wanted to start with is a high-quality staff. So you can actually go on to the next, it repeats. So, oh, not that, don't go that far. They can see my graphic. Okay, so the building blocks for Big Rocks really truly are our staff. So I'll echo what was being said about the staff earlier. I will tell you that coming in, I had some expectations for what the staff at the school would be like, and it's really, my expectations have been exceeded. So actually had a post-conference with a teacher today, and I just looked at her at the end and I was like, I don't really know what to tell you. That was really good. And I'm gonna have to come in next time and really nitpick you because it was so good. So really happy with that. But then on the next slide there, I'll just point out that, not only do we have an excellent certified teaching staff and administrative staff, we've been lucky to have really good counselors and a social worker with Sarah Swinford. I don't know where we would be in the first couple of weeks of school without them this year. We've had quite an interesting beginning of the year in some ways with some of the students that we have had some discussions with. And so without their help, don't know where we would be. And then as far as our administrative team, we've been lucky to have an interim admin dean with a lot of experience, Mr. Blankenship. Also, Ms. Powell has been just a complete rock star to start the year in helping me to be able to get acclimated. And then we've hired Mr. Wilkins, who's a math teacher at the high school, and he's had a really good start too. And then as far as classified staff, we have the best custodial staff that a school could ever ask for. And I like that even during the meeting, like they got no time for us. They were just continuing to work. And incredible instructional assistants, and then food service, of course, has been amazing too. And then the district big rocks and are things that we're focused on as well. So MTSS, just a quick, very general, we're focused on our map data. We'll be going over it with a fine tooth comb here in the next couple of weeks, looking at those things that we've received recently. And then classroom assessment data, looking at our common formative and summative assessments that kids have in classes. And then behavioral focuses. We know coming out of the pandemic that we're not dealing with the same exact type of kids that we had before the pandemic. So focusing on strengthening our PBIS structures and identifying areas that we can grow just as a whole school in implementation of behavioral procedures and policies is what we're focused on. And as far as our PBIS, if you haven't heard it before, we focus on being respectful, responsible, and ready. And we're doing all right with respectful. We got to work on responsible a little bit. And ready is a day-to-day thing for some in middle school. And so as far as tier 2 and 3 teams, really focusing on the tip of the pyramid and some of those students that have continual behavioral issues, especially, or academic issues, is something that we are going to continue to get better at. PLCs, that is not our staff, but I like that picture. The guy in the middle especially. But PLC is something that we do every week, and it's been a really valuable part of the week at Woodford County Middle School. And so in making sure that we have a guaranteed and viable curriculum in all content areas and in all classes is an important thing that we do here. I put this on there for you under this slide because I wanted to talk about it for just a minute. If you're not familiar with jungle tigering, we've been saying that a little bit with our students and staff, and we're going to continue to do it. It's basically, it's based on a guy named Trevor Reagan, his work. His website's called trainugly.com, and basically he talks about the idea of a zoo tiger versus a jungle tiger, and which one do you want to be. The zoo tiger has everything handed to them, and their existence is pretty easy, but in order to learn and to grow, you have to be a jungle tiger because you got to figure out those things on your own. So that fits well with us, and so something that we're focused on. So going on to the next part, mental health being a district big rock, we're trying to address the needs that we know we have, and also to build resilience among all students. We know that through the jungle tigering aspect, that's really what we're trying to build our students who are resilient, both in life circumstances, but also in learning when they face challenges, and encourage them to take risks and not be afraid of failure, but to embrace that challenge and to grow from it. And then just providing them opportunities through mental health counseling, through contacts that our counselors and social worker have, and then also just providing an overall supportive environment for students every day. One of our big rocks at the middle school is to provide rigorous and engaging instruction. And so you've got those two little stick men fitting the two puzzle pieces together. We're focused on alignment to standards, making sure that our learning intentions, those things that are referenced by the teachers every single day, that they truly line up with our success criteria, which is what we want students to be able to do at the end of the class period and at the end of each lesson and each unit. So what are we actually looking for? And making sure that we are teaching that direction and living up to it, our end of the bargain as far as that goes. And then engaging lessons, we just want to make sure that they're relevant and real world, because that's truly what brings students back in a good state of mind. Right? Probably Dr. Sargent's probably had some really engaging lessons.
Oh, absolutely.
So there you go. And that's what I remember as a student. Those are the lessons that you really cared about in the teachers' classrooms that you wanted to go back to. And then authentic literacy is the last one. Just reading, writing, and discourse. Those three things are a focus for us across the board in the middle school. We know that we've got to get stronger in preparing readers to move on to high school, and that's our goal. That's the building block and foundation of all learning, and so we've got to make sure that we do a good job here at the middle school in preparing them for high school. And then writing, we feel like the best way to do that is through argumentative writing, and so we want to make sure that we do the best we can to make that pervasive across every class and content area. So we're working and taking steps for that. And then discourse, it's a joy to hear students talking about the content and giving them opportunities to do that, and making sure that those opportunities are frequent and impactful for them. So that's all I got. There you go. I went fast. I'm sorry. I feel like the micro machines guy.
I was in a classroom today.
Hang on just a second, Mr. Mattingly.
I was in a classroom today, Mr. Madley, and the students were working on dominant recessive genes. Mr. Webb had them designing a monster, basically. And some of the conversation was kind of funny to listen to. Is like, well, now, if they have three eyes, what color are they going to be? And what kind of genes do you have for that to be a dominant trait? Is it going to be a forked tail or a straight tail, or maybe no tail at all? So it was just a really good conversation to hear, and it really had kids thinking about what they wanted to see this monster look like, first of all, but again, what the genes, both dominant and recessive, should look like in order to fit that Punnett square and develop what they were looking for in their monster. So yeah, it was just a great class, I thought.
If it's a Mattingly monster, it would have blonde hair. We know that.
So as a middle school parent, I just want to make sure I understand you're teaching them to argue in writing. So that's why my texts from my daughter are...
So not exactly in the way that you're seeing it manifest there. Okay. So, in my opinion, the best way, and I'm a social studies person by nature, in my opinion, the best way to get students engaged in both reading and writing is for them to form opinions and to then back that up with textual evidence. And so that's where we're looking. She needs to give you some textual evidence.
Gotcha. Okay. No, I was teasing. I think it's been a great year so far. I think that it's a good vibe in the building, and you obviously had big shoes to follow. Ms. Kirk was wonderful, and the staff that she had put together, and we have heard nothing but good things about you, and we're very happy to have you here at Woodford County Middle School.
Thank you.
So thank you for everything you do, and I'll let any other board members chime in, or if there's any questions.
No, I would just say thank you so much. I know the students have, your opening day video was absolutely the best, and it really just does capture the whole middle school student experience. But you and your staff have done a really, really good job, and I'm sure you guys are looking forward to fall break.
Yeah, we are. Thank you.
Nothing from me, but a big thank you and a welcome back to Woodford County, right? So, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I just received a presentation from a sixth grader about why she should get a rat. And she definitely backed up her reasons with text in a PowerPoint, and she's not going to win, but
So what
she's
was her-
clearly,
So what was her claim, though?
well, she says people say rats are dirty, but they're really not. Like domesticated rats are not dirty, and
And she gave you evidence?
she did.
worth
She
considering.
cited it and everything. She's not going to win, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So it was impressive. She's clearly learned something. So
Oh, good.
yeah, but she's happy to be here, and we're glad you're here. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
and then if I could chime in as well, I just want to say it's the real world lessons and the real world connections that stick with you throughout your high school career and throughout what I would hope would follow me throughout my college career as well. So to see an emphasis on that, it's just very, very good. Thank you very much.
All right, good deal. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Hash. Thank you, Mr. Mattingly. All right, so we have approved the consent agenda. Next, we will go to the regular agenda. Is there a motion to accept notification of personnel matters?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Item B is to accept notification of payment of bills. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Glass. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Item C is to approve the meeting minutes of the August 22nd, 2022, September 1st, 2022, and September 7th, 2022 board meetings. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Item D, Mr. Wells will have you join us for, it's the creation of positions and stipends. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Glass, not Ms. McGlass. And Mr. Wells, can you tell us a little bit about these positions?
Sure.
Thank you.
One position is one that I put on there, and that is a high school PE teacher. The high school is as large as they've ever been in my 20 years. They have just over 1,300 students, and so they have literally earned an additional teaching position per the board staffing formula. And so the site-based council wants to add additional PE/health support because those are some of the largest classes that they have. So that's the position I put on there. I know Ms. Francis has some special education positions that she wants to speak on. And then Mr. Asher referenced some stipend positions that maybe Ms. Tracy can talk on as well.
I have several positions on there. One would be a speech and language pathologist. We currently have 7, and they cap out at 65 students each. And with the numbers coming in, they are currently going to be over 45 students. So even adding another will still leave a little wiggle room, but there's no wiggle room for them to even do new referrals and process child find needs with the current numbers. So that is the reason for the speech path request. There is an IA here at the middle school, an instructional assistant, and that is to support our moderate to severe programming. We had 2 IAs that always served that room, and for a couple of years, numbers were shifting from elementary to middle to high, and that happens at times, so we kind of rerouted one to support our past program. That person will stay in that position, and we need a second due to the significant needs within that program because numbers came up from the elementary transitioned up to the middle school. We are requesting a middle school LBD position, so learning disability behavior position, and that is also due to an increase in numbers in students with disabilities. Here at the middle school, you can have anywhere from 15 to 20 students on a caseload, and you also have to account for need and intensity, and some of our teachers are capping out at the 15 because of the way that we have to staff between 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. You can't have 20 on your caseload. You can only have 15 if you have any 6th graders, and there's no way to serve them all. So 6th graders are running across this. It's a large group of 6th graders that came in. North side, we currently have 2.5 teachers there, and I'm requesting a full-time teacher at North side. I was fearful that that was going to happen. I want to serve every student that we have, but then we really had to. North side is kind of my quirky school. The number is. It either pans out to what I have projected it to be, or it's completely the opposite of that, and they move to Huntertown or Southside or a different school. So this year, though, we are seeing an increase out at Northside, and the increase is overall. It's across. It's all surrounding us. It's all due to the effects of COVID is really truly what it is. Our students that did not receive intervention early on that may have a disability, those early interventions really do support not becoming a friend of special education, but at the same time, they can become my friend, and we provide the support and services. But it does come down to numbers and what the state allows us to provide per caseload, per teacher, and then you have to account for our intensity levels as well. I think that accounts for all the positions I put on there. Any questions?
Very much. I think, Mr. Asher, or unless you want to answer them, Ms. Francis, the grant-funded stipend, I think you touched on that, or Ms. Okay.
There's two. They
Okay.
will not come out of our instructional money. They will come out of grant funding. And so we just want to be real clear and transparent. And so we're asking that they be put on the salary schedule. One of the positions is for deeper learning that Mr. Asher talked about earlier, and required by the grant is a percentage of those monies to be spent on personnel. So there's stipends. That's a 3-year grant, like you mentioned, and so there would be a $1,500 stipend for the first 2 years, a $2,000 stipend for the 3rd year, and that's stipulated in the grant. And then the second grant stipend that we asked for was for PPOS grant. That's a working grant that is just 1 year. It'll just be on the salary schedule for a year. It's a $1,500 lead stipend that we're asking for, and that one is I don't think we've talked about that since it was approved, but that grant, just in a nutshell, talks about having a group. We're going to take a classroom at the high school, and they are visiting a factory. They're going to see real work in action. They're going to come back and create a cell project that could be used. Kind of think STLP, how they will create something and then put it in a competition. We're going to do the same thing with this grant money. So they're going to go see a manufacturing, they're going to come back, make a demo for themselves, and then enter it in the competition. But that's all grant funded. But the lead is a high school teacher that is working with that class for that one. Questions?
Thank you. No, and thank you guys for all of your work on securing those grants. Those are wonderful opportunities for our students.
And if you have trouble finding a manufacturing facility, let me know.
Actually, the grant sets us up with that.
Darn it. It's already set up. And I look back to Ms. Francis because she is, her and Dr. Jones were working on it before. And so she is, probably knows as many answers to this as I do. But there's already a field trip set up. Mr. Atkins is going to go. It's in October. If you're interested, we can give you some updates after we've been. And we already have a lead in mind for this stipend. Connor Richardson at the high school. So.
Okay. Well, if you ever do need anything from that end, let me know.
Okay, I'm going to put that in my filing.
Please do. All right. We have a motion and a second. I've lost my place. Thank you. On item D, is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. We have already approved or finished with item E. Item F, Mr. Smith, we are back to you for approving the awarding of a bid for an outdoor walk-in freezer at Southside Elementary.
Yes, so Ms. Squire put that out for bid, and I don't have the vendor in front of me, but she got the quote back and would like to get that installed at the elementary school.
All right, is there a motion to approve the bid?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. I will second that. Is there any further discussion?
The only question that I have is, did we only get the one bid?
We only got one return bid back, yes.
One returned bid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I assume we're using our funding from Ms. Squire's
Yes, we're
Healthy.
using her, that's right, we're using her healthy food service fund balance to pay for
Good.
that, yes.
Good. All right, all those in favor of awarding the bid, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Item G, Mr. Smith, is still you. That is to approve Mason Structure A1A contract revision.
Yes, there was an issue with the, one of the sub-vendors for Mason Construction. They couldn't execute the direct purchase order with the language that was in the purchase order. And so Mason agreed to rework the contract with no cost issues to us. So the contract will remain the same, and they're going to eat the cost for the difference in how the direct purchase orders are handled. And Clay can add to that if I.
Hi, Mr. Ratliff.
Good evening. It was a direct purchase order with Ram Tool. It was $25,000. It's very odd for them not to execute a direct purchase order. We've never had that issue, and Ram Tool is a common direct purchase order. I really don't know what the reasoning was. I do know they recently have new ownership, so I'm sure it's related, but basically that $25,000 was coming to you all with no tax through a direct purchase order. It's still $25,000, which is $1,500 tax. So Mason Structure will eat that. It's no cost. It's just changing over the amount from direct purchase order to contract.
All right. Is there a motion to approve that item G is described?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. I will second that. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Item H is to approve the change order number 1 for Fayette Electrical.
Okay, so basically the time this project was designed, the design team, CMTA, they work with the local utility companies. That's standard on every project. We've never had this problem occur, but throughout COVID, we've constantly had problems with shortages, or the transformer that provides power, it takes longer to get to site, or we have to use a temporary transformer. But it's another result from COVID, the supply chains, and the manpower. When we started conversations with Kentucky Utilities, or KU, went back and forth a little bit and basically received a letter that said they were no longer providing temporary power for anybody in their service region, which is something we've never encountered. It's hard to explain the significance of that. It basically would mean that every trailer, every tool that has a cord, everything would have to be ran off of a generator. It's not that that's not possible, but contractors would definitely have to be aware of that before a project starts. Everybody bid this job assuming that the local utility company would provide temporary power. So we were able to meet between Trace Creek, CMTA, the whole design team, and Kentucky Utilities and come to an agreement by going up Schoolhouse Road. Long story short, we're able to take permanent power to where the current office trailer is that you see there. It was originally going to be up towards Tyrone Pike and crossing over the new Tyrone Pike connection. This way they can run permanent power up Schoolhouse Road, and instead of doing a temporary service and a permanent service, we're essentially going to keep extending the permanent service as we go. KU agreed to that. It does create more rock excavation, more boring, and several hundred feet, I believe, of lineal feet of pipe, which is where the additional cost comes from. I will say that I'm not saying $7,000 is no amount of money to you all. It most certainly is, but for such a significant problem this could be, it's a very small change in our opinion. It started out higher. Between us and CMTA, we were able to whittle them down to $70-something hundred, $7,839.39. This allows all the people coming onto site to have power to their office, and then for the project to have temporary service while it's being built.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the change order as described?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion or questions?
I do have a couple questions. Will this almost $7,900 increase, will that come out of the contingency on the BG1? Is that where that'll come from to pay for that?
Yes.
Okay. And what happens when the contingency money is exhausted?
Well, I'm not sure. I've never heard of that happening, to be honest, but the contingency amount that's what it's geared for change orders that occur during the construction process. And so I think our contingency is over $3 million for this project. So, but if it's gone, I'm assuming it's just gone, and you have to, if you need more funding, you'd have to look somewhere else for funding.
Okay. So that's just something we'll kind of keep an eye on.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
I would add to that, I've never in my personal experience seen a contingency exhausted completely. Typically, the way it goes at the end, an owner can take that and do things that they wanted to do but wasn't sure, so they kept that in a contingency till the end.
Still has to be used for construction, but not even necessarily that construction.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to discussion items, unless there are any communications that anyone would like to share. All right, discussion items is the current high school facilities report. Is there any discussion on that?
So I did some, well, obviously I read through all the reports, and I'm wondering if it wouldn't make sense, because I think a lot of things, these are all at least 2 years old, some going on 3 years old, and I think things have changed quite a bit, and I think specifically a lot of these costs would change, which may change some prioritization of it. Does it make sense for us to have some sort of special meeting to sort of update all of this and then gather again to figure out what we need to do, and then how to kind of build that into our finances going forward to make sure that what needs to be done at all the facilities gets done timely?
I think that's a great idea. I know Mr. Adkins had mentioned at our last meeting the need to revisit the KFIX report to accurately capture the current state of the buildings. And I think we may have a need to reconvene the district facilities committee. So I think a special meeting would be completely appropriate for that. I think it might be helpful to reach out to Ross Tarrant and ask when they could complete a KFIX, so that we would have that information in hand to make the best decisions at that meeting, if that would be something that you agree with.
Yeah, and then the one very specific thing that I would like to make sure we take a look at would be on the high school facility plan, anything that was noted as in critical, poor, or even, I think there was only one fair condition, but it's only maybe a half a dozen items.
Okay.
Just to make sure that those are absolutely addressed. And I think a couple of them have already been addressed.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think that, Mr. Adkins, if you would reach out to RTA and ask them what kind of time frame they would need to get that done, and then I can reach out to the board members once we have that information, and we can schedule a special meeting to address all of the facilities questions, and especially the current high school, as Ms. McHale has noted.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. There is not a need to go into an executive session, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. I will second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Thank you all for your time.